On Primetime Politics tonight, crossing the floor, Fredericton MP Jenica Atwin leaves the Green Party to join the Liberals. After a sometimes public feud, are the Greens facing a unity crisis with an election in the wings? I'll speak with Green Party leader Annamie Paul. A veteran Liberal MP calls on his own government to set out a clear plan for reopening the Canada-U.S. border and calls for loosening restrictions now. I'll speak with Wayne Easter about his call for action. And the Prime Minister arrives in England for the G7 summit and an agenda focused on the pandemic, economic recovery, China and climate change. What are the Canadian objectives and challenges? This senator, a longtime summit diplomat, sets the scene for us. And our panel of party commentators weighs in on the key stories of the day. But we'll begin tonight with a defection in the House of Commons. Green Party MP Jenica Atwin, who won the seat in Fredericton for the party in the last election in 2019, a breakthrough for the party in Atlantic Canada, has crossed the floor to the Liberals. That leaves the party with just 2 MPs in the House now for the Greens. Atwin made the decision to dump the Greens after an ongoing public battle in which she openly challenged party leader Annamie Paul's position on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
It's a good day. I think this is a positive thing for my community. And the past month I've been at a crossroads. It's been, in a word, distracting. And so I'm going where I can do my best work on behalf of my community and for the people that I care so deeply about.
And I am joined now by Green Party leader Annamie Paul. Ms. Paul, good to see you again, and thank you for taking time to speak with me tonight. What did you know about Jenica Atwin's plans to leave the Green Party? Had you had any conversations with her? Did you know that she was unhappy and about to make this move?
No, I did not know that she was planning to. I learned just shortly before her news conference, not through her or her office, but through party staff. How
do you feel about that?
It's disappointing to lose a member. It's something that is a loss, and while it is certainly her decision to make, it's disappointing. I'm sure that there will be members of the Green Party out in Fredericton who worked really hard to get the first Green MP elected out in the Atlantic provinces. I'm sure it's going to be tough for them too. I wish that we'd had the opportunity to speak about it in advance so that I could have given her the reasons that I think she's a better fit for our party. But she said it was a personal decision, and I accept that.
She did also say that your public statements about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and she responded to them in social media at the time, did play a role in her decision to leave the party. And she said she wanted to work in what she described as a more supportive and collaborative environment. What do you take that to mean, and what responsibility do you think you have for her decision to quit the Greens?
Well, first, that's not what I heard at all, and of course I watched the press conference. I have not made any public statements with respect to, and when I say public, I mean in terms of interviews with respect to the bombings that occurred not too long ago in Israel and Palestine. I have put out, as the leader of the party, two written statements with respect to that. And more importantly, Ms. Atwin said today during the press conference on more than one occasion when she was asked directly about me that this was not a reflection on me or my leadership, and that I did not play any role in her decision, which she said was a personal one that she had taken, and she shared the reasons during her press conference. So I take her at her word when she says that, and our relationship has been one of very involved colleagues up until very recently. We had an event together just as recently as last month. We co-hosted an event on mental health. We've done quite a lot of work together in a very short period of time. So I don't have any reason to doubt her, and I don't think anyone else has any reason not to take her at her word.
So what do you think she means when she says she wants to work in a more supportive and collaborative environment? Who would she be talking about?
Well, I think that's an excellent question to ask her. Of course I can guess, but I'm not going to try to guess at what she means by that. I think it's always better to ask the person what they mean. I've been in this role for about 6 or 7 months now, and certainly You will have heard me say many times, Peter, in my interviews and in my press conferences, that what we are seeking is a less partisan, more collaborative, more cooperative approach to politics and a culture that is more welcoming, both within our party and within politics in general. So I've been working really hard to do my part to try to create that, and I will always accept that there is more work to be done. But I think that that work is being done, and as I said, when Jenica gave her reasons, they weren't linked to me in particular.
Okay, but the timing is interesting. The executive committee of your party chose not to renew the contract of one of your top advisors, Noah Zatzman, after he expressed solidarity for Israel and accused unspecified Green MPs of anti-Semitism. Two party executives have announced they are stepping down early. All of this as Greens could be facing an election campaign soon, like every other political party. Is there a serious unity problem in your party right now, and how will you deal with it?
Well, I think, Peter, that you're tying things together that that aren't linked. In terms of our federal council, we have federal council elections every year around this time. More than half of our federal council members are always renewed. We had a number of people on one-year terms. We had another people who came in with specific mandates and have already expressed that they plan to leave once that work was done. So, this is just a normal renewal that all political parties have.
But are you saying Mr. Zatzman's comments on social media?
No, I was just running through the list. There were three items. One was the council. Yeah, the next one was there was the council. There was also there was a third one, and I've lost the train of thought. Only to say, and then yes, Ms. Atwin. Just in terms of what she told us today, and again, I haven't heard any of this firsthand, but Minister LeBlanc and Ms. Atwin said that this is a discussion that had been going on for many weeks, that it predated the last couple of weeks when the activities that you mentioned had happened. So I would just encourage people again. I mean, we don't want division where we don't need to have it. Ms. Atwin has wished the party well, wished me well, said that she hopes that we remain friends. And so I believe her. That's certainly how I'm going to approach this. And I don't see any reason not to take her at her word. All
right. Annamie Paul, thanks for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
A veteran Liberal MP is calling on his own government to lay out a clear plan for reopening the Canada-U.S. border. The issue is expected to be discussed between the Prime Minister and U.S. President Joe Biden at the G7 summit in England on Friday. PEI MP Wayne Easter is the co-chair of the Canada-U.S. Inter-Parliamentary Group. He joined his U.S. counterpart, New York Congressman Brian Higgins, for a panel discussion today hosted by the Tourism Association of Canada.
You are fully vaccinated. If you're fully vaccinated, whether it's 7% of your population or 45% of your population, you pose a very small risk of getting COVID or giving COVID. And therefore, those individuals who have been fully vaccinated on both sides of the border should be able to cross that border.
And Liberal MP Wayne Easter joins me now from beautiful Hunter River, Prince Edward Island. That's right at the intersection of Highways 2 and 13. And Mr. Easter, good to see you again. Thanks for being with me.
Good to be, and good to be here in Hunter River.
Look, so Congressman Higgins has been pushing for the border to reopen for some time now. You've also joined in, calling for the easing of more restrictions at the border. Do you support his call to allow anyone now who's been fully vaccinated, Canadian or American, to be allowed free movement across the border?
Well, yes, I do, to the greatest extent. Look, if vaccinations are supposed to, if they're supposed to do what's been suggested to us, then they should be a safe way for people to be able to travel, protect themselves and the public from further COVID transmissions.
The government will be relaxing some measures early next month, to allow fully vaccinated Canadians to skip the hotel quarantine when they return to Canada. So does that go far enough, in your view, in relaxing the restrictions? I gather not, based on what you've just said.
No, it doesn't. Look, let me give you an example.
Sure.
You know Prince Edward Island well. There's a lot of Americans come here. They have seasonal residences here. They come from 4 to 6 months a year. And I've talked to many of them. They're doubly vaccinated. They're willing to come here and follow the local rules. If that means a 10-day or a 2-week quarantine, then they're willing to do it. They have people that'll bring them groceries. They'll follow the rules. Doesn't it make common sense for them to be able to come to their seasonal residence, do some renovations on their property, buy groceries in the local community, and do their part for adding the economy, meet their relatives and their friends? That, to me, is common sense, and it should meet the health protocols, I would think.
Okay. I mean, the measures taken at the border were by your government, were implemented and maintained in large part due to what Canadians were seeing in the United States, that rapid spread of infections across the U.S. Are you suggesting that was the wrong approach, that we went too far here in this country?
No, not at all. Look, in the beginning, there was a lot of danger on the American side. Over the last 6 months, the Americans have, in fact, they surpassed us. We're now caught up again. But they surpassed us in terms of getting the vaccinations out, getting them into arms, and doing pretty good health protocols. So we're in a relatively equal level in terms of vaccinations now. So we really need to be in a position where we can start to relax the rules. We have to do what we have to do safely. Yeah. My view is the government of Canada needs to lay out its plan with specifics, not going to say, in a few days or another month. You need specifics. Under what conditions will the border open up to all people that are vaccinated?
Right. I mean, so
that's what needs to be laid out.
I mean, you've not been afraid to speak your mind before. Are you saying that? Are you saying here that your government's not handled this? The border measures fine, but are you sort of saying enough already? It's time now for you to tell us precisely when it is we can get back to something closer to normal.
I'm saying we need to be moving back closer to normal as rapidly as possible, and in a way that it's safe, gets our economy rolling. But I will outline a real complication for the government of Canada. Look, let's be honest.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Canada at the moment,
the premiers in the provinces
is operating like 13 countries in one. I think some lessons learned from this pandemic is we do need some national programs in this place, sometimes mostly with the federal government in charge. The Prime Minister is under pressure from Doug Ford and others saying, no, tighten up the border, tighten it up even further. You can't tighten it up further than it already is. It was as tight as it could get. Now is the time to start to relax things safely. So it's complicated, but let's get on with it and get it done.
All right, Wayne Easter, always good to talk to you. Thanks for your time tonight, joining us, as I said, once again from Hunter River PEI. Good to see you again. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
The Prime Minister has arrived in Cornwall, England for the G7 summit. It's Justin Trudeau's first trip outside of Canada in more than a year because of the pandemic, and the first G7 summit for U.S. President Joe Biden. On the agenda, international tax reform, climate change, China, and the strategy for global pandemic recovery, including the distribution of vaccines and reopening international travel. But what's the Prime Minister's agenda? What should we be watching for? What challenges will be facing Justin Trudeau in his first gathering of G7 leaders in 2 years? Senator Peter Boehm is the chair of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee and is a former diplomat and Sherpa whose job it was to prepare the current Prime Minister and former Prime Minister Stephen Harper ahead of international summits. Senator Boehm, good to see you. Thanks for being here and giving us some of your time tonight.
Thank you, Peter.
Let's start with the timing of this summit. How important is this gathering, given the vulnerabilities that have been exposed by the many shocks that we've seen during the pandemic over the past 18 months, and along with that, conflicts with China and more?
I think it's a very important summit, and it comes at a significant time. Obviously, there is the pandemic. Leaders were not able to meet last year under the U.S. presidency because of the pandemic, and they were not able to meet in person. So this is the first in-person meeting. There will be new people there, not just Mr. Biden, who will draw a lot of attention, but a new Prime Minister of Japan, a new Prime Minister of Italy, new leaders from the European Union, and a few other actors as well. The stakes are very high. There's the economic downturn to worry about, which of course is related to the pandemic. There are flashpoints in the world that need discussing. And as well, for Mr. Biden, a lot is riding on this because he has a NATO summit afterwards. He has a European Union summit after that, and then he ends his trip to Europe with a meeting with President Putin in Geneva. So this is a very important event.
What are the key priorities for Canada and the Prime Minister at this summit?
Well, the Prime Minister comes in with a certain amount of experience. He's number 2 in the longevity rankings after Angela Merkel. So he will have been through many of these negotiations before, but nothing quite like this one in the sense that so much is riding on how to deal with the pandemic, how to secure health for the world, not just for the G7 countries themselves, and also how to build back the economies. I think also, when we're speaking of prime ministers, Prime Minister Johnson has a lot riding on this as well, because it's the first time that the UK is hosting while not being in the European Union. And of course, there is the big climate change summit coming later in the year. So everybody has high stakes in this one.
Okay, let's talk about one of the things that Boris Johnson wants to put forward, of course, and that is, along with Joe Biden, pressing for a new coalition of democratic nations that would include the G7, along with India, Australia, and South Korea, to stand up to China. Canada has its own well-known problems with the Chinese regime. So how do you expect Justin Trudeau to respond to an invitation to join a Stand Up Against China coalition?
Well, I wouldn't call it a Stand Up Against China coalition. I think it's a democracy coalition. China is one of the challenges. There are a few other countries where there has been some, shall we say, challenges to democracy and backsliding on democracy. But certainly China will be a subject of great discussion. And in the 6 summits where I served 2 prime ministers, China was always on the agenda. I think it's more of an acute and robust discussion that will be offered this time around. And obviously, Canada has a lot riding on that because of our particularly difficult situation with China at the moment. But in a way, I think the pump has been primed with the Declaration Against Arbitrary Detention, which was a Canadian initiative. And both the G7 and other countries supported that. There will be questions about China's interest in the South China Sea, Taiwan, democracy in Hong Kong. So the China file is a very rich one for leaders to discuss.
We know that Joe Biden is showing up at this summit, coming to this summit, and hoping to send a message to the world that the U.S. is back and wants to take a leadership role. And one of the things he's done right out of the gate is announced that the U.S. will donate 500 million doses of vaccine to the lowest income nations. Lots of pressure in this country on Canada to donate vaccines as well, rather than pushing to try and fully vaccinate all Canadians before doing that. What kind of pressure could that put on the Prime Minister of this country, having Joe Biden say, look, we're making this big donation of vaccines to countries that need them?
Well, on the pandemic and on vaccination, the leaders will have a discussion about the COVAX facility and how that is working, how that is being administered by the World Health Organization, how the World Health Organization can be enhanced and can be supported. I think the government has already made some statements about what to do with excess vaccine. As I understand it, the Canadian contribution to COVAX is just over $500 million. So these are not insignificant promises and amounts. I suspect the urging will be to do more, and the G7 has proven in the past, for example, in establishing the Global Fund against HIV/AIDS and other diseases, that it can do that and it can mobilize funding. And of course, this is where the international financial institutions also come into the picture. So I suspect there will be a good discussion on that. Much has happened already with the G7 health ministers meeting, the G7 foreign ministers, and importantly, the G7 international development ministers in terms of figuring out how to vaccinate the developing world as well.
All right. Senator Peter Boehm, always great to get your perspective. Thanks so much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Well, let's bring in our panel of political commentators now. Susan Smith is a Liberal commentator, Tim Powers is a Conservative commentator, and Tom Parkin is an NDP commentator. Susan, let me start with you with the defection of Jenica Atwin today, leaving the Green Party for the Liberal Party. How important is this pickup for the Liberals, especially if we think a federal election may be just a few months away?
Well, I think it shows some momentum for the Liberal Party. When an MP is disgruntled with his or her party, they have the choice of where they want to go, if they're going to cross the floor or cross to another party. And Jenica Atwin, who was viewed as a rising star in the Green Party, has decided to join the Liberal Party. She's obviously decided that makes the best hopes for her Liberal prospects, that best aligns with her climate action and her mental health and her mental health advocacy and other things, and that the Liberals best represent her, the best chance for Fredericton. So I think that's good news, and it's a good sign for the Liberals.
Tim, how do you see this?
Well, it's not good news for the Green Party. I think, as always seems to be the case, as they get closer to an election, they seem to have a big outbreak of infighting. So losing an MP, their first MP in Atlantic Canada, is not good. Sure, today it's beneficial for the Liberals. That Fredericton seat, as we all know, is a tough one. It's gone back and forth over the last couple of years, a couple of elections between the Conservatives and the Liberals, and then was taken by Miss Atwin. So it'll be interesting to see if she can hold that. But it's a good day for the Liberal Party when they get a new MP, particularly as we're apparently close to an election. Peter.
Tom, how do you see this defection and what it means?
Well, I think I see it as a very cynical move, unfortunately, and it's the kind of thing that breeds cynicism amongst voters, and I think we deserve a whole lot better than that. The people of Fredericton voted for somebody who stood with the Green Party, I presume because they didn't like massive subsidies to fossil fuel industry, and they didn't like Mr. Trudeau buying a pipeline for tar sands oil, and yet here is their MP that they voted for in good faith, crossing over to exactly the party that she used to oppose. To me, that's wrong. It's not democratic. It shouldn't have happened. And it's an offense both to the voters and of that riding and to the parliament itself, which is supposed to represent the people as they vote. I know they vote for individuals. We see a name on the ballot, but come on. We all know in practicality, people vote for the candidate of the party of their choice.
I mean,
so I don't think it's a good day, Peter.
All right. Susan, why don't you jump back in? But also in the context of what does it mean for look, the party's just gone through, well, not just, but recently, it's got a new leader in Annamie Paul. And if we've got an election, we're going to talk more about that coming up in the not too distant future. How damaging is this for the leadership of Annamie Paul, or is this something she can recover from fairly easily?
Well, I will tackle that, but it's also, I think, to Tom's point, I saw NDP MPs tweeting saying she's a great MP, it's too bad she didn't join us. So I'm not sure how upset Tom would have been had she joined the NDP today. But is it damaging for Annamie Paul? Yes. Are people following the machinations of the Green Party day by day at the present juncture? No. Can she recover from it? I don't know. I don't think as a new leader, she's been able to grab a hold of the party. She doesn't have a massive presence, certainly in Ottawa, and especially not so much in Ottawa, I would say beyond the country. There's the challenge that Elizabeth May is still there and very present. And I think probably if you ask people very quickly in a poll, who's the leader of the Green Party, they'd still say Elizabeth May. So that's not helpful to Annamie Paul as she tries to set her own mark on the party. Disagreements, there seem to be many, and that's not a good sign for her leadership.
Let me hear you on that, Tim, and the challenge. What new challenges does this now present for Annamie Paul?
To also put a bit of an Atlantic lens on it, too. I mean, the Greens have been doing better in Atlantic Canada. As you know, they were the opposition, or still are the opposition in Prince Edward Island. I think, if I recall correctly, they have 3 seats in the provincial legislature in New Brunswick. So Annamie Paul should be finding ways to work with these Atlantic Greens, who I think have different views than some of the West Coast Greens. So it's not helpful to her. I wonder how that regional dynamic will play out for Jenica Atwin's re-election chances, because the New Brunswick Green leader certainly is well known and well liked in New Brunswick. He hasn't been applauding Jenica Atwin's move there. So her reelection prospects, she may think are better going to the Liberals. But as I say, Fredericton's been a contested seat, and the Greens in Atlantic Canada have some organizing capacity and the ability to disrupt, if not find a new candidate who could challenge her for her reelection potential.
Tom, let me pivot here. The House of Commons is going to wind down in the next 10 days or so. Liberals and Conservatives are locked in this procedural battle in the House now as the government tries to push through key bills before the recess. Liberals and Conservatives blaming each other here for parliamentary delays, filibusters at committees. Are we seeing the stage being set here for the narrative that Justin Trudeau wants to be able to go to the Governor-General on his own when we get a Governor-General and say, look, this is a parliament that no longer works. That's why I need to go to the people to get a new mandate and hopefully a majority government.
I'm not sure if we have a Governor General or not these days, but theoretically, anyway, Peter, I think that is what is being told to us. And there's a certain amount of hypocrisy, of course, on the Liberal side, because they themselves are a big part of the filibustering that's going on. And they also held back a number of very important bills to kind of, till the end, rather than bringing them up and giving them the time. So I think we're watching the narrative being developed by Mr. Trudeau. I think Mr. O'Toole has foolishly fallen into it by being obstinate and providing the evidence to Canadians that there's at least some resonance to this, some truth to this. And if I was Mr. O'Toole, I mean, he's going to lose seats at the level that he's at right now. And everything that we've been going through politically for the last number of months, I don't see it changing for him. Right. So I think he's made another misplay. We'll see, but the odds, I think, are very good that the House is going to rise, and we're going to see an election call, around Labor Day. Yeah, okay.
Susan, what are we seeing here? Is this, if you're a Liberal and you want an election, and you think the timing's right for an election, is this, standoff in Parliament or ongoing procedural fight in Parliament exactly what you're looking for to be able to go to the Canadian people?
It's helpful, I think, because if, Parliament either has to work or it doesn't have to work. And if the Prime Minister and the folks around the Prime Minister think the tea leaves are right to go to the polls this fall, I don't think it would be before that. I put Election Day on the 25th of October, actually, because of MP pensions, too, for those elected in 2015. But, I think going this fall and showing that Parliament is working, the Prime Minister could argue he could request a mandate to implement the economic recovery. He could argue that, in addition to arguing that there's dysfunction within Parliament. But if vaccines are going into arms, which they are, 7.1 million doses of Moderna coming next week, if schools get to be reopened at the local levels, if the economy starts to reopen, the borders reopen, people are traveling again and feeling better, it would be a good opportunity for them to go.
Tim, let me finish with you. Is the die being cast here for a fall vote?
It has nothing to do with parliamentary work functions or nothing, function or dysfunction, Peter. It has everything to do with the Delta variant. If the Delta variant is held off and there is no fourth wave, I'd venture that we will be heading to the polls sometime or election will be called sometime after the middle of August, and we will be voting in September or October, depending on when that happens. So I'd be very surprised, as I say. The Delta variant's controlling the tune here, nothing else.
All right, so the election's all about the Delta Dawn, not the fights in the House of Commons. All right, thank you all. Thank you all for being here, and we'll talk again soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
That's all for this edition of PrimeTime Politics. I'm Peter Van Dusen. From all of us here at CPAC, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.